At 6:15 a.m. on November 7, 1942, the jungle of Guadalcanal held its breath, and a 23-year-old Marine lay face down in the mud, listening to his squad leader die 15 feet away. Corporal Thomas Lyons did not see the shot that killed Staff Sergeant Robert Chun. No one did. There had been only a single crack of a rifle, a violent snap that tore through the humid air, and then silence. No muzzle flash. No rustling leaves. No second shot. Just another Marine bleeding into the soil of an island that was supposed to have been secured weeks ago. Around Lyons, the jungle seemed alive and empty at the same time. Towering mahogany trees, thick palm fronds, vines hanging like nooses from a ceiling 60 feet overhead. Somewhere up there, or perhaps out there in the green maze, a Japanese sniper was watching, waiting, breathing slowly. And Lyons realized, in the 12 seconds between that fatal shot and the moment he forced his own breathing to slow, that the sniper had not disappeared. He was still there. Exactly where he had fired. By November, the 1st Marine Division had been fighting on Guadalcanal for 3 brutal months. 16,000 Americans had landed in August to seize Henderson Field from roughly 11,000 Japanese defenders. Commanders had expected days of resistance. Instead, they found themselves locked in a 6-month struggle defined not just by massed assaults or artillery barrages, but by something more unnerving, men dying one at a time. A radio operator setting up communications. A corpsman tending to a wounded Marine. A rifleman stepping through shoulder-high grass. A single crack. A body falls. Then nothing. In the 2 weeks before that November morning, 73 Marines had been killed by sniper fire. Not in dramatic charges. Not in sweeping offensives. One shot at a time, from invisible positions that seemed to swallow the shooter whole. American snipers were trained to fire at long range, 600, maybe 800 yards with the right rifle and scope, then move immediately. Shoot and displace. Never remain where you've revealed yourself. But the Japanese snipers on Guadalcanal operated differently. They worked close, sometimes within 50 or 100 yards, close enough to see faces, to hear conversations, to study the habits of their targets. And after they fired, they did not move. Patrols would scour the jungle floor and find nothing. Days later, when they examined tree forks high in the canopy, they found abandoned perches, ropes, straps, scraps of canvas tied securely to thick branches. The realization began to form among officers like Lieutenant Colonel Samuel Griffith. The snipers were not retreating. They were staying. They were tying themselves into the trees, securing their bodies so that fatigue, wounds, or even sleep would not send them plummeting 60 feet to their deaths. It was a tactic born of discipline and endurance. Japanese snipers trained to remain motionless for 12, 14, even 16 hours. But what had been designed as a safety measure had created a hidden vulnerability. A man tied into a tree could not easily relocate. Once he fired, he was committed to that position. If the enemy could find him, he was trapped. That morning, as Lyons pressed his cheek into the mud and listened to the jungle's oppressive silence, he understood this instinctively. He had grown up in Oregon's timber country, the son of a logger. From the time he was 14, he had worked summers among towering Douglas firs, learning how to read a canopy the way other boys read books. He knew what belonged in a tree and what did not. He knew the difference between natural asymmetry and the subtle geometry of a human body. So Lyons stopped searching for movement. Movement was a trap. The sniper had none. Instead, he searched for proportion. The human body carries ratios that nature rarely mimics. A head atop shoulders roughly 2 heads wide, a torso descending in predictable lines, a vertical silhouette in a world of chaotic angles. Through the lattice of leaves and branches, Lyons began a grid search, left to right, top to bottom, forcing himself to ignore fear, to ignore the image of Chun dying nearby. 200 potential positions within 100 yards. Any one of them could hold death. Then he saw it, 45 degrees to his right, nearly 60 feet up in the fork of a mahogany tree, a shape too vertical, too symmetrical. A dark mass that did not blend quite enough. He focused harder. There, shoulders. A slight forward tilt of a head. The outline of a rifle. Straps binding legs to trunk. The sniper was still aiming at the jungle floor, waiting for another Marine to expose himself. He was not looking up. Slowly, carefully, Lyons raised his M1903 Springfield. No sudden movements. No betrayals of intent. The range was short, perhaps 70 yards accounting for elevation. He aligned his iron sights on the dark silhouette. Inhale. Exhale. At the midpoint of his breath, he squeezed the trigger. The Springfield cracked. High above, the shape jerked violently. Something metallic tumbled through the branches, the sniper's Arisaka rifle, clattering into the undergrowth below. But the body did not fall. It remained suspended, lashed to the tree, lifeless and bound. Sniper down, tied in the tree. Lyons called out. Marines emerged cautiously from cover. One climbed the mahogany trunk to examine the position. Canvas webbing secured the dead soldier's torso and legs. A water bottle hung nearby, half empty. A small bag of rice. 60 rounds of ammunition. The sniper had prepared for a long vigil. He had intended to remain there for hours, perhaps the entire day, patient and invisible. Instead, his immobility had betrayed him. Word of the discovery traveled quickly. Within 48 hours, Griffith compiled a 3-page tactical brief and distributed it throughout the division. The instructions were precise: search the canopy, not the ground. Look for proportion, not motion. Use systematic grid patterns. Focus on tree forks capable of supporting a man's weight. Remember that many Japanese snipers secure themselves and cannot move after firing. Marines began implementing the method immediately. On patrols near the Matanikau River and around Henderson Field, rifle companies identified and eliminated multiple tree-bound snipers within minutes of first contact. Casualties from sniper fire began to drop. By January 1943, losses had decreased dramatically compared to the deadly weeks before Lyons' insight. The tactic spread beyond Guadalcanal. It traveled with Marines to Bougainville, to Tarawa, to Saipan. Eventually, it appeared in U.S. Army jungle warfare manuals. The principle was simple but transformative: an enemy who remains immobile creates a pattern. And patterns can be detected. Japanese forces attempted adaptations, loosening ropes for mobility, shifting to ground concealment, even employing two-man sniper teams, but the strategic tide of the Pacific War had already begun to turn. Tactical ingenuity could not offset overwhelming American air and naval superiority. Thomas Lyons survived Guadalcanal. He fought at Cape Gloucester. He rose in rank. In September 1944, during the savage fighting on Peleliu near Bloody Nose Ridge, he was killed by Japanese artillery fire at the age of 25. There was no medal for discovering the canopy search method. No ceremony crediting him with saving lives. His insight became doctrine, absorbed into training manuals without attribution. Yet its impact endured. Modern Marines are still taught to search above eye level in dense terrain, to recognize that camouflage hides color more easily than it hides geometry. Whether using iron sights or thermal optics, the lesson remains: human beings have proportions. Guadalcanal cost thousands of American lives. Historians still debate its strategic necessity. But for the men crawling through its mud, strategy meant little compared to survival. One corporal's understanding of trees, of shape, of stillness, of how men look when they try to become part of a forest, shifted the balance in a quiet but measurable way. He transformed snipers from ghosts into targets, from myth into method. And that is how, on a humid morning in November 1942, in the suffocating jungle of Guadalcanal, a timber worker's son looked up instead of down, and changed jungle warfare forever.